So in the third paragraph of the second meditation, he is working at doing this. He's kind of rooting around in his beliefs from the standpoint of having doubted everything or being someone who's put everything into doubt, okay? And he's looking for something that, despite his doubting everything, he can still be certain of. And this is how he reasons. He says, but how do I know there's not something else over and above all those things that I've just reviewed, concerning which there's not even the slightest occasion for doubt? Is there not some God, or by whatever name I might call him, who instills these very thoughts in me? So he's considering it. Maybe I have to doubt everything, or I'm doubting everything, but can I be certain that there's a God who's instilling the thoughts in me? He says, but why would I think that, since I myself could perhaps be the author of these thoughts? So he rejects that hypothesis as something he can be certain of. He can't be certain that there's a God putting these ideas in his head. It may be true there's a God. He has imagined that there's a God in order to remember how little he's certain of. Imagined that there's an evil God who's deceiving him in order to remember how little he's certain of. But he can't know for sure anything about this, it seems. He says, am I not then at least something? But I have already denied that I have any senses and any body. So based on what he's imagined so far, he's just dreaming. Or this is all an illusion put into his head by an evil God. He can't know for sure that that's not the case. So if those things were true, then he wouldn't have senses and he wouldn't have a body. So it seems like he can't even know that he himself exists. Then he goes on to say, still I hesitate, for what follows from this? Am I so tied to a body and to the senses that I cannot exist without them? So that's an interesting question. When I think to myself, okay, I'm doubting everything I possibly can doubt, including that my senses are telling me accurately about the world, that I'm not dreaming, that I can trust my reasoning. So I'm doubting that I have a body or senses. But can I doubt, does this mean that I don't exist? He goes on to say, but I have persuaded myself that there is absolutely nothing in the world. No sky, no earth, no minds, no bodies. Is it then the case that I too do not exist? So in other words, he's asking that question again. I'm under this hypothesis of my being wrong about everything. Can I also imagine that I don't exist? He goes on to say, but doubtless I did exist if I persuaded myself of something. But there is some deceiver or other who's supremely powerful and supremely sly and who's always deliberately deceiving me. Then too there's no doubt that I exist if he is deceiving me. So he's sort of arrived at a place where he's saying, okay, so maybe I'm wrong about everything that I'm thinking and experiencing, but if I am the one who's thinking and experiencing it, even if it's all wrong, then don't I at least have to exist as a thinker or an experiencer? I don't have to exist as a body, but I have to exist as a mind, as something that's asking these questions and doubting things. And then he says, well, wait, but I'm imagining that there's this evil genius God that is deceiving me about everything. Can this God also deceive me when I think that I exist? When I think, maybe I'm wrong about everything, but can I not exist? No, I have to exist. Can I be wrong about that? And Descartes goes on to say, then too there's no doubt that I exist if he is deceiving me. And let him do his best at deception. He will never bring it about that I am nothing so long as I think that I am something. Thus, after everything has been most carefully weighed, it must finally be established that this pronouncement, I exist, is necessarily true every time I utter it or conceive it in my mind. So what he has found by the end of this paragraph, and then he's going to go on to elaborate this in the rest of Meditations 2, to say more about what this thing is that he's now found that he can be certain of. But basically what he's saying he can be certain of is his own existence as a mind, his own existence as a thing that is undergoing the process of doubting, questioning, thinking, sensing, experiencing. So he's admitting that he could be wrong about the content of everything that he experiences. In other words, it could all be an illusion, it could all be a dream. But it can't not be the case that he, as a mind, as an experiencer, as a sensor, exists because he's having the experience right now. When he undergoes this process of questioning, when he asks, can I be wrong that I myself exist? He has to say no, because I'm directly experiencing my own existence as a mind. So I know that that exists. Now, I invite you to do the same thing. This is probably, almost certainly, Descartes' most famous idea, certainly his most famous philosophical idea. And it is expressed sometimes with the expression, I think, therefore I am. If you think in your own case, ask the question in your own case, can you really believe that you don't exist as a thinking thing, that you don't exist as something that is believing, that is questioning? When you ask yourself, when you sort of look, examine your own thoughts, are you able to really hold it as even a possibility that your thoughts themselves, as thoughts, don't exist, aren't real? And the rationale for saying no is that you are directly aware of your thoughts when you're thinking. So it might be the case that nothing else exists, but your thoughts have to exist because you're aware of them right then. So how could you be aware of them if they didn't exist? How could there be awareness if awareness didn't exist? Okay, so I'm talking through it in a couple of different ways to try to clarify why people are convinced by this when they are. So Descartes is convinced by this. He's convinced that he knows this for certain. And a lot of other people who've read Descartes since have been convinced of this. And they've thought this is something, in fact, any one of us can know for certain. Our own minds. We can know that our own minds at least exist as minds, even if they don't get the world right, even if they're full of illusions and errors, still that our minds exist, each one of us must be 100% certain of. We can't possibly be wrong about that. Now, I mentioned to you before that this idea is sometimes expressed with the phrase, I think, therefore I am, which in Latin is cogito ergo sum. And so this is sometimes also referred to as the cogito. Basically, the me or I that I know just as a thinking thing. The I that thinks, the I that experiences, that is referred to as the cogito. And I will refer to it as the cogito throughout these lectures. This expression shows up in Descartes' other book, the one that appeared 4 years earlier, called The Discourse on Method. It doesn't appear in exactly this form in the Meditations. So when people are quoting Descartes, they're quoting The Discourse on Method. But it's exactly the same idea. The idea that I can't possibly be wrong in thinking that my own mind, as an experiencing, sensing, questioning thing, exists. So Descartes believes he has found his foundation, the foundation for the rest of his beliefs in this new, well-founded model that he's building. And the rest of the work of the Meditations will be to build on that foundation. He'll reconstruct the rest of his knowledge with the cogito as the basis of everything else that he claims to know.